What's up my friends, today I'll be reacting to how geography made the US ridiculous overpowered. This should be a fascinating one, but before I go into that, let me ask you for one thing. If you can leave a like on this video, thank you so much for that. It's the best way to show support. If you can subscribe, oh man, you make my day. Have that in consideration. Now, link for the original one on my description. You guys end up recommending this video quite a lot, so yeah, let's see it.
The United States of America is the most powerful empire that has ever existed in human history.
Okay.
Without even being the absolute largest in terms of overall territory. No other empire has ever been as capable of so thoroughly enforcing its will across the rest of the planet. Economically, the United States has continuously remained the world's largest economy since the 1890s, and is the only country that has ended every single decade with a larger economy than it started with for the past 150 years.
Ooh, that's amazing stuff. I mean, congrats guys, honestly, because most of my audience is actually from America. That's amazing. I mean, really good stuff.
The US dollar is the primary reserve currency used by most of the world's nations.
Okay.
America's government is the second longest continuously run regime in the world. And despite making up just 5% of the contemporary human population, the United States controls around 30% of the entire planet's wealth. And
That's insane. So 5%, but you guys have 30% of all the wealth. That's crazy. I'm sorry, that's crazy. Look, and the thing is, I don't see anyone becoming number one in the near future, because I think America is too much ahead. I have to be real. And I love that, because I think at least I look at Americans, and I know some people disagree with me, but I don't care. I look at Americans like the good guys, even though they are not perfect, but thank God that they are the ones leading the world, and that's honestly fascinating stuff. Oh man.
Produces 20% of all global manufacturing. And complementing America's tremendous economic might is also her unprecedented military strength.
Yeah.
The US
Look, at one point, I know I post too much before you even put the comments, but look, I do this for fun, and I love to react to those videos. But at one point I may thought, you know what, maybe China can actually surpass America. No, I was crazy. No chance at all. China have so many problems. America also have their own problems, but America is too much ahead of the competition. And I know America, the name of the country is United States of America, but when I say America, I believe you guys know what I'm talking about.
Military alone represents nearly 40% of all worldwide military spending. The US Navy represents half of the worldwide naval fleet. The United States controls more than 750 overseas military bases across every conceivable theater of the world, enabling America to attack any threat anywhere on the surface of the planet in less than 48 hours. And
that's crazy. In 48 hours, oh man. By the way, you guys are seeing that image on the screen, right? If I see this coming to my country, I tell my wife, pack everything, aliens are coming, we have to go. Come on, that's scary stuff. Imagine someone messing with America and you guys send that. Oh man, I would be, no, I'm out, sorry, no chance.
While there are many factors that contribute towards this unprecedented global power and influence of the United States, the biggest reason for it and the true source from which all American...
Okay, another pause, I know, but for me it's difficult to react to those videos, specific when they start putting landscapes on the screen, because look at that. So beautiful. Oh my god. I know this is not the point on the video, but come on, that's so beautiful. Is this what, Colorado?
Power stems is the fact that the geography and the geology of the North American continent itself is just insanely overpowered from a civilization building standpoint. In fact, it's so outrageously overpowered that it's not even really fair to any of Earth's other civilizational start points, and...
Okay, let me try to make a prediction why I think it's overpowered. Maybe because... Actually, I don't even know that why America should be so overpowered. And Canada, it's not, you know, because maybe you guys have a lot of mountains that make a barrier, but this is me making stuff up. Probably is not that.
It was almost inevitable that any civilization that began where the United States did, regardless of people or ideology, would have eventually emerged as the dominant global superpower. So allow
Not sure if I agree with this one. I mean, without seeing the rest of the video, of course, but there is a lot of countries with amazing natural resources, amazing geography, and they still struggle. So I think, yeah, it helps, but there is more than that, at least my perspective.
Allow me to explain in depth why that's the case. To begin with, the core geographic reason of America's global power and the core of the North American continent itself is almost certainly the Mississippi River, and the vast basin that surrounds it, wedged in between the high Rocky Mountains in the west and the low Appalachian Mountains in the east.
Okay, this is crazy. The Mississippi River, oh man, and stops right there, does not even go to Canada. That's crazy. I mean, maybe when the borders are made, you guys had that in consideration, I would assume. But this is a nice way to put things outside of America and also inside of America. Distribution power. This is actually really, really interesting.
Interconnecting with the Illinois, Ohio, Tennessee, Red, Arkansas, and Missouri rivers as well.
Okay.
Most of the tributary rivers that
so
feed
beautiful.
into this enormous system, spanning 1/3 of the entire continent, begin at relatively low elevations, which effectively means that the majority of the basin's rivers are calm and absent of any obstacles like rapids, and have therefore been easily navigable for thousands of years without the need for any advanced technology, expensive development, or infrastructure. The most important thing to understand about the Mississippi River itself is that it is the longest navigable river in the world, meaning that since time immemorial, anyone
Honestly, I had no idea about that, but I mean, that's why I love to react to this stuff, because I learn a lot, actually.
one could essentially sail a boat carrying supplies or people from the Gulf of Mexico into the Mississippi's mouth and up more than 3,000 kilometers deep into the North American interior before hitting the river's only natural waterfall here, which, without coincidence, is exactly where the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul was settled. The navigable section of the Mississippi River from these waterfalls down to the delta in the Gulf of Mexico is more than 3 times the length of the Rhine in Europe, and 1/3 longer than even the Danube, Europe's second longest river. Navigable rivers like the Mississippi or the Rhine are tremendously valuable to generating economic activity because they are substantially cheaper to use as transportation of goods and people than land-based infrastructure.
Oh man, I never thought about that, but that makes so much sense. Because you don't have to do anything to the river. The river is already there, basically, you know. And roads, you have to build that, and the roads, you have to keep up with them. But the river is much easier. It's basically nature gave you this. Okay, I'm starting to understand why America is overpowered when it comes to geography, because yeah, that river is probably key for America's success.
In rail.
But most people probably are not aware of that, or at least outside of America. Maybe in America you guys are, but I was not, at least.
Ways require not only high initial costs to construct, but high ongoing maintenance costs to keep them functioning and running as well. Whereas rivers are already there and are basically just free to use.
Exactly.
The only costs involve creating ports and boats to carry stuff up and down them. And as a result of that, shipping products by water as opposed to land is anywhere from 10 to 30 times less expensive in the modern 21st century era. And civilizations who have more navigable rivers will be able to retain substantially higher amounts of profits from all the capital that they'll be saving on transportation costs. This fact instantly makes the Mississippi River, as the longest navigable river in the world, tremendously economically valuable to anybody who controls it. Farms and factories built along or nearby the 3,000 kilometers of its banks between the Delta and the Gulf of Mexico, and the waterfalls at Minneapolis-St. Paul are capable of cheaply exporting their products further downstream and out into the world ocean toward global markets. But the Mississippi River itself is only the main stem of the overall greater network of navigable rivers found across the greater Mississippi Basin, granting settlements as deep into the interior of North America as Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Minneapolis, Chicago, Sioux City, St. Louis, Memphis, Muskogee, Shreveport, and more.
This is really insane. So the connections you also get with the river, that's fantastic.
To effectively become oceanic ports, all capable of exporting their various products cheaply down the Mississippi River network towards the Gulf of Mexico. But it isn't just this uniquely vast system of internally navigable rivers within North America that give this continent such an advantage to commerce. It's also the fact that around much of North America exists another highly unique geographic feature that cannot be found anywhere else in anywhere near such a useful pattern. The many, many barrier islands that exist in an almost continuously uninterrupted chain for more than 4,800 kilometers, around 3/4.
What that means, barrier islands. I'm not sure if I'm understanding this one, but I guess he will explain it.
Of the U.S. Gulf and East Coasts. From the southernmost tip of Texas, where the Rio Grande empties into the Gulf, up to the Chesapeake Bay that harbors Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. In effect, these countless low and flat islands have transformed what would otherwise be 4,800 kilometers of exposed coastline into a network of protected, shielded bays that can be effectively utilized as a...
Okay, is this thing the what he's talking about? I'm not sure if I'm understanding this one, my friends. Or basically, I don't know. Actually, I'm not understanding this one.
River, relatively navigable all the way from Brownsville, Texas to Baltimore, Maryland. And since the delta of the Mississippi River empties out directly into this further navigable network, it means that goods have been able to be cheaply, reliably, and...
Okay, so this is a crazy theory that I will put out there. So there is no waves, basically. They are places that are safe to arrive. I'm not sure.
Quickly transported from all throughout the North American interior to all across the Gulf and East Coasts now for hundreds of years. When collectively added together, the internal rivers of the Mississippi Basin and this external intracoastal waterway wrapping around the Gulf and East Coasts account for nearly 25,000 kilometers.
Okay, I think I'm actually understanding. So there is basically some type of protection across the land, that the waters are a bit more calm. I think that's it.
Kilometers of combined navigable waterways, which is not only more than the rest of North America combined, but more than the rest of the entire planet combined.
Oh, that's crazy.
The end result is the greatest natural transportation system to be found anywhere in the world. An enormous network of freely available riverine superhighways that causes 90% of the lower continental 48 United States to be within just 240 kilometers of an easily navigable waterway. And it was all just effectively given to the United States more than 2 centuries ago, back in 1803, when the French decided to sell all of it for about $340 million into...
Okay, I had no idea about this fun fact, but that's really crazy.
Day's currency valuation. And then, the power that this system of natural navigation offers the United States is even further exacerbated when you consider that it spans across what also just so happens to be the largest contiguous stretch of arable farmland on the planet as well. The American Midwest. the westernmost portion of the Midwest, located within the rain shadow cast by the towering rock.
Hey, leave a like if this video is amazing so far, because I believe this video is amazing so far. I'm really enjoying. He's explaining this very well, actually.
Mountains of the continent is dry but temperate and perfect for growing wheat like Ukraine and southern Russia, while the central portion is temperate and humid, perfect for growing corn and soybeans. Today, an area more than twice the size of France is under till within the Midwest alone. And as a result, this region produces nearly a third of the entire planet's supply of corn and soybeans, and more than $150 billion worth of agricultural produce overall per year. And all of this enormous agricultural land happens to also roughly overlap with the world's largest network of easily navigable rivers.
Oh my god, this is an amazing video. Now everything is starting to make a lot of sense to me. So I have a bit of a stupid question, but I have to ask it, because if I don't know, I think it's fair to ask. Can America serve, let's say some crazy war happens tomorrow, and China says, nothing goes to America anymore, Russia says the same, all the other countries says the same. Can you guys survive? I mean, survive, I think the answer is of course yes, but can you guys be independent, Basically, you guys can produce everything in your country and do not need the rest of the world, or will that be too difficult? Because I think that's a really fascinating, almost question to know for me, because if that's the case, you guys are so ahead. That's why some people say that the only way America falls could be internal, if the country is to split or something, but I don't even think that's the case.
Is a perfect natural recipe for an agricultural superpower to develop from. And when further considering the fact that the Intracoastal Waterway Network further services the transportation needs of everything from Texas to Maryland, the Columbia and Snake Rivers flow through the agricultural zones of the Pacific Northwest, and the San Francisco Bay and Sacramento River help out within the Central Valley of California, you can quickly see that with very few exceptions, the vast majority of all of America's agricultural regions are within just 240 kilometers of a navigable waterway to the ocean, enabling food grown across the rural parts of the continent to easily and cheaply be transported to the same continent's urban population centers in a way that simply no other continent on the Earth could ever match. And we're still pretty much just at the beginning here of explaining the sheer scale.
And we are just at the beginning. Oh my god, this will be insane.
Of North America's geographic advantages towards maritime power and commerce. Because you also have to consider the many natural indentations of the continental coastline itself that creates many of the greatest natural oceanic deep water harbors in the world. In order for a natural harbor to make a good port, they must really have three crucial ingredients: deep passages for shipping, enough resources in the immediate hinterland to support cities that can support the port, and plenty of coastal frontage area. When only considering natural harbors across the world that possess all three of those critical factors, the top three largest of them are all within continental North America and controlled by the United States outright. The Chesapeake Bay between Maryland and Virginia, the San Francisco Bay surrounded by California, and the Puget Sound of Washington State. These three are arguably the most impressive natural harbors found anywhere on the surface of the Earth. While the Chesapeake Bay itself, all on its own, has a longer coastline than the entirety of India combined. When added to—
That's insane. Wow, what? Oh my god, Do you guys think most Americans are aware of this, or are you guys also learning this for the first time with me? Because I find this so insane.
Together, the entire coastline of the modern United States is well over 3.5 times the length of the entire African continent. Despite the fact that Africa itself is more than 3 times larger than the United States in terms of—
So this is the indentations on the land Oh man, they almost seem designed, you know, if you really think about
of overall land. This means that the United States coastline on the Atlantic, Gulf, and Pacific has a greater overall potential for ports than any other country on the Earth, bar none.
Yeah,
and can even fit in significantly more ports than entire other continents are capable of. And then there's also the fact that with a little modern civil engineering, the United States acquired a second enormous internal navigable waterway in the mid-20th century, the Great Lakes. Due to the fact that the Great Lakes are naturally full of rapids like, you know, Niagara Falls, and the fact that the
Oh my god, that's so beautiful. I did not even know that was in America. Niagara Falls. Wow.
connections between the lakes often
Oh my god, Jesus. See, this is the problem with this type of videos. You guys send me those videos to react, but man, America is so beautiful. I know this is not related with that, but come on, look at that. Is that where? Alaska?
freeze over during the winter, they were never naturally navigable on their own all the way through history until the very late 1950s, when a series of locks and
Okay, but the stupid question. Why do you guys want to put ships on lakes? I'm not understanding that, actually.
canals were completed by the Americans and Canadians. Now, the Great Lakes serve as a complementary internal water transportation.
Or can you connect this until... Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, because you have connections, right? That lead you into the ocean if needed.
System to the Mississippi Basin and Intracoastal Waterway, enabling even further cities deep within the continent to effectively become oceanic ports, from Duluth to Detroit
wow.
to Cleveland
It's
and Buffalo.
amazing.
And then there's the fact that through a series of artificial canals, the Mississippi Basin system and the Great Lakes system are now connected with each other, and barges can effectively freely navigate.
That, whoever thought about that man is a genius. I'm sorry. That's a tremendous good idea.
With their cargoes in a giant circle around the entire eastern United States. But great as it is, the Mississippi Basin does contain a couple of critical geographic vulnerabilities that can be exploited by America's enemies. And both revolve essentially around New Orleans. The most
Never trusted New Orleans. I'm joking, by the way.
strategically important city in the entire United States, because it serves as the gates between the entire Mississippi River superhighway network and the Intracoastal Waterway and Gulf of Mexico. Should New Orleans ever fall into enemy hands or be somehow destroyed, the link between the greatest river network for transportation in the world and the global ocean would be blocked, and the
Okay, but 100% there is a lot of security there. There is no chance Americans let something happen to that. So this is a non-argument for me.
whole system, along with the American economy, would effectively break down. And there are theoretically two arguably easier ways to accomplish this, besides from capturing or destroying New Orleans itself. The first way is to take advantage of Cuba. You see, Cuba is probably the most strategically valuable piece of the North American board that the United States doesn't out.
By the way, I have to react to a video about American Cuba, because I never understood really that well what ended up happening there. I know Cuba does not like America. I believe America does not like Cuba. Logic reasons, right? But why did America do not conquer Cuba? Because that seems so easy for you guys. And if this is such an important point, why not? You know? I mean, now I sound a bit bad. Not why not. I mean, they are humans and we have to respect them. But back in the day, it almost made sense that you guys took that.
Right control or have significant influence over. This is because of the way the island juts into the Gulf of Mexico, creating two straits that all ships coming back and forth through the Gulf and the greater world ocean have no other choice but to pass through. The Florida Straits in the north or the Yucatan Strait in the south. All on its
Okay, so this is why there is so many Cubans in Florida, because they just, make sense for them to escape the country and entering there.
own. Cuba is too small of an island to ever leverage the strategic position to threaten the trade of America's underbelly between New Orleans, the Mississippi Basin, the Intracoastal Waterway, and the outside world. But when placed under the sway of a major power from another continent, it absolutely can be, as nearly happened during the early 1960s, when the Soviet Union began placing nuclear missiles and troops there. Cuba can hypothetically be utilized as a springboard to attack the United States' most significant.
Wait, how can you guys let the Union Soviet put stuff? No chance. That's too dangerous for you guys.
Significant geographic advantage. And as a result, Washington has been actively carrying out the longest trade embargo of modern history against the island for more than 60 years now, desperately hoping to bend its people towards its will and to prevent any large, hostile foreign power from ever.
So you guys basically control Cuba, but they don't get the benefits of being Americans. Got it.
becoming too established there. The
okay,
other
this actually makes sense.
Is almost paradoxically the Mississippi River itself, which has desperately wanted to change its course now for decades. For thousands of years now, the Mississippi River has always meandered around over long periods of time, and its delta has shifted across various positions along the Louisiana Gulf Coast. Back in the 1970s, the river would have naturally shifted course away from its current path, beginning in a location that hardly anyone will have ever heard of: the small town of Vidalia, Louisiana.
Ah, Vidalia. Yeah, no, never heard about.
From here, the Mississippi would have begun flowing into what's currently known as the Atchafalaya River, down to a new delta in the Gulf about 120 kilometers southwest of present-day New Orleans. Had this been naturally allowed to happen, the entire Mississippi River would have diverted completely around the cities of Baton Rouge and New Orleans, leaving their river-based infrastructure stranded and their people without...
Okay, so climate change can actually be a problem for, is a problem for the world, but could be also a really problematic for America because of this. This is actually, this is interesting.
Without any source of fresh water, and creating a new delta for the river in an area that is presently, essentially, the middle of nowhere. The end result would have been an economic catastrophe for the United States of unprecedented proportions. And so, in anticipation, the United States Army Corps of Engineers constructed what is probably their proudest accomplishment: the $2 billion old river control structure within the small town of Vidalia, which artificially forces the Mississippi River...
Oh my god. That's genius, and the designer was on point, because that's kind of beautiful. Good on you guys. Oh man.
To unwillingly continue down its historical path towards Baton...
Oh man, that's so beautiful. I'm sorry, but that's so beautiful. Come on, how can you not pause this?
Rouge and New Orleans, where all the infrastructure built up over centuries is actually located. But should this structure ever somehow fail in the future, the mighty Mississippi would almost immediately and violently snap courses to flood down the Atchafalaya towards the Gulf instead, flooding everything in its path and effectively destroying the utility of all America's industrial and agricultural processing infrastructure between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and temporarily shutting down most of the Mississippi Basin's superhighway system until new infrastructure could be built down in the new delta. These weaknesses, though, are...
Okay, really interesting so far. We are more or less at the half of the video. I know a lot of YouTubers make part 1, part 2. I don't care about that. I will react to everything and upload just one video because I think that's much better. Probably not the best for views, but I don't care that much about that. I prefer to put content that I think follows a train of thought. That said, those arguments that can put America in trouble, I'm not buying them. I think you guys have everything under control. Of course, nature can always win against humans, but so far I'm not worried about.
essentially only hypothetical. The fact is that the land where the United States is placed in is the best suited location in the entire world for a civilization to develop into a colossally capable maritime empire, for all the reasons that I've already explained, and for many more. For example, there's also the fact that for centuries now, the United States has been capable of developing within this continental-sized landmass without the fear.
Dude, I know I post too much again, but man, Canada is huge. Look at that, man. It's crazy. Canada, I mean, also, right? Canada also had the potential to be a super, super powerful nation. But they are not, and now they cannot be because America goes, hey, what are you guys doing? Keep calm. But if you look at land, you know, and by the way, they don't have they don't even need a strong military, you know, because America protects them. Let's be real. Actually, I'm talking too much today, and I know at this point most people are not watching the video. Can we all be real? But if you are, tell me one thing. Put one in the chat if my English is something that you actually can understand, because I'm always worried about that, to be honest with you, my friends. Put 2 in the chat if you struggle a bit to understand me. That way I could improve in the future.
Of any regional rivals developing to either the north or the south in Canada or Mexico, largely because the geography of both these regions to the south and the north cannot support nearly as powerful nor as populous an empire as the land in the middle that is presently controlled by the United States. After the United States invaded, conquered, and annexed half of Mexico back in the 1840s, the largely mountainous lands that Mexico was left with didn't contain even a single naturally navigable river within the interior, and only a single good natural port on the coastline at Veracruz.
Crazy.
In addition, what agricultural areas
I said that's crazy probably 100 times already, but that's crazy.
Mexico had left were
Mexico is, yeah, sorry Mexico, you guys are not OP at all.
Relegated within the many valleys crisscrossing in between the mountains, leading them to be highly separated from all the other agricultural areas of the country, which is completely opposite of the enormously interconnected agricultural geography further to the north in the United States. And then in Canada, the vastness of the Canadian Shield, a cold region where glaciation over eons of time.
I did not know that. So that's basically freezing right there, the Canadian Shield. Man, Canada. They cannot win one. Oh man. Canadians.
Has stripped the area of most of its usable soil, making it useless for agriculture, stretches across half the entire country, between the Great Lakes and the Arctic Ocean.
Okay. So, who was the person that ended up making the borders? Because that guy deserves a Nobel Prize. That was the true genius of everything, you know, because they gave Canada, yeah, Canada, do you guys want a lot of land? Yeah, no problem, take that. And yeah, this does not work.
And separates the small, agriculturally productive core of Canadian civilization around Toronto and Montreal from the Prairie Provinces and British Columbia over to the west. Without any internally navigable rivers between them to rely upon, like much of the United States, there is still, to this day, only a single road that connects all 4 of these provinces west of the Canadian Shield to the core of Canadian civilization to the east of...
I'm sorry, but I mean, I probably have some Canadians watching right now, but you have to admit that America really got the best out of Canada. It is what it is.
The Shield. And this means that, inevitably, the 4 Canadian provinces west of the Shield are significantly more economically integrated with the United States to the south than with the rest of Canada to the east, because it's far easier to actually travel south and access America's vastly superior transportation network.
Okay, that's crazy.
As the fate of geography would have it, the core region of North America's insane productivity and easy transportation is also one of the most secure locations of its kind anywhere on the planet. far
Okay.
removed from any potential major rivals or threats. And this, in essence,
I mean, that's for me. That's the main reason why actually I believe America is the number one country in the world. Because if there is a war, look, Europe. I live in Europe. We are fighting all the time. It's crazy, and basically countries they become good fighting on the ground, but on the air they are not that bad, that great. On waters, forget about it. You know, so. Nah, I mean, America in this case is too ahead.
is the secret sauce of America's enormous geopolitical.
Because let's be real, no, Mexico, you guys do this, go on. Canada, first of all, Canadians are amazing people. Not that Mexicans are bad people, by the way. I want to to correct this, but there is that stereotype about Canadians being amazing people, so they will never mess up with America. And probably is not also the best idea. So
Strength.
you basically are
Incredibly
totally
easy
safe.
transportation within the core, combined with incredibly difficult transportation beyond it. Not only can no rivals easily develop within North America to threaten the core, but two enormous oceans separate the core from all other continents as
Pacific
well,
and Atlantic.
essentially transforming the United States into an island empire, but of continental scale. Oceans are incredibly difficult for invading militaries to travel across. In 1940, with the domination of continental Europe, Adolf Hitler had to cancel the invasion of England across the English Channel because it was proving too logistically difficult for the Nazi war machine to pull off. And that channel is only 33 kilometers wide at the
That's
narrowest
crazy.
point.
So they struggle with that, 33 kilometers. Right? Is that correct? Actually, let's run it back.
Was proving too logistically difficult for the Nazi war machine to pull off. And that channel is only 33 kilometers.
Insane. So imagine trying to mess up with America. I think if they try that, they may even get lost on the ocean, and they all of a sudden they are fighting China. No chance.
Wide at the narrowest point. The shortest distance between the United States and Europe is nearly 5,000 kilometers across the open ocean, and it's even further away from Asia across the vast and empty Pacific. So, as a result, the core of the United States has never been invaded by a hostile foreign power in more than 2 centuries since the British in 1815. Because
impossible.
it's largely impossible to actually do so. Especially when considering that the United States also controls half of the naval tonnage of all the world's navies and dominates the entirety of the world's ocean.
Okay. Since this is a long video, I feel like I can ask multiple questions. I have another one. So I know right now you guys spend like 800 or 900 billion. I think it's irrelevant, but you guys spend a lot of money on the military stuff. But for example, when, and I'm not trying to be political because I don't care about that. When Republicans are in power, do they spend more, or Democrats? I mean, I think it makes sense for Republicans to spend more, right? Or is this more about when there is tension in the world, like right now? Because, yeah, I mean, it's Biden, right? And he's spending a lot. So, actually, I'm curious about that. But when there is peace, there is never peace, to be honest. But when things are a bit more normal, because nowadays we live in a crazy world, do Republicans inject more money on the military or Democrats?
And
Or
even
is
if
equal.
somehow a foreign power was capable of miraculously overcoming the largest, most capable, and most technologically advanced navy in human history, and then transporting and supplying hundreds of thousands to millions of troops across thousands of kilometers of open ocean and landing them on the beaches of North America, it still
So beautiful.
wouldn't even really matter.
Can I make a guess? This is Florida, right? But can also be California. But I think it's Florida.
Because the North American continent has, essentially, all of the resources required for modern civilization and modern militaries located deep within it. This is the other huge key to the power of the modern United States, North America's raw geologic potential. For many decades, the specter of overdependence on other nations and other continents for their energy resources towered over the minds of America's most strategic planners. Though it was once the largest producer and exporter of oil in the world throughout the early 20th century and provided nearly 6 out of 7 of all the barrels of oil used by the Allies of World War II, America's days as a major oil-producing nation were believed to be ending by the mid-1970s, as demand rapidly outpaced production in the post-World War II boom economy. By 1973, with the country importing more than
So, do you guys grow up, because I have a lot of people even older than me watching me, but I grew up with people saying that fossil... I forgot the word in English. But basically, fossil stuff would be gone in 10 years. Then was 20 years. But seems like those predictions end up being wrong every time. Do you guys think that was some type of propaganda that was going around? Because I remember studying this, learning this on school, that, we have to go to different type of energies because fossil stuff is very, very limited. In 10 years, things can be gone. In 20 years, we may have nothing. But seems like the resources are still, I know they are not unlimited, but they almost seem like unlimited. Am I tripping on this one?
Third of its entire oil supply from abroad, the United States was suddenly especially vulnerable to international oil embargoes coming from OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, consisting of countries across the Middle East, Africa, and Venezuela. At that time, the countries of OPEC represented half of all the oil production in the world, and their decision to embargo the United States due to their support of Israel during the Yom Kippur War shut them out from that half of the world's supply, and caused American energy prices to skyrocket. Later on, after the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran, the United States became shut out from that country's entire rich supply of oil as well. And as the demand for oil within the United States continued to increase throughout the 20th century, and with domestic production never capable of catching up, America found itself in a position where, by 2005, the country was importing a whopping 60% of its oil supply from abroad, an amount.
Okay, so far I'm understanding, but what's the point, the main point?
That is, percentage-wise, highly similar to what China imports today. As a consequence, American foreign policy was, for decades in the later 20th century, dominated and constrained by this heavy dependence on the outside world for its oil.
Exactly, that was what I was also understanding. So this is not even that great if you guys depend so much on other nations.
Supplies. But beginning in the early 21st century, a revolution in the oil and gas industry back at home would permanently change this reality with profound and still unknown consequences. Technological and economic innovations in drilling technology and techniques now known as fracking were finally unlocking the ability of oil and gas companies to economically crack the hydrocarbon code of shale rock, which had remained elusive for more than a century beforehand. Beginning in Texas as recently—
Oh no, okay, so the resources are the same, but right now you guys can explore it a bit better. But looking at what the narrator is saying, this could actually be something that we are not sure how well it will play out in the long run. But okay, I mean, now even my question almost got answered, right? Because there is better ways to extract those resources. Correct, right? I think I'm spot on.
Recently as 1998, within a region known as the Barnett, around Dallas-Fort Worth, the news that shale rock could be economically harvested for oil and gas began to rapidly spread like wildfire. These new shale discoveries revealed that Texas possessed many of the largest oil and gas fields known anywhere in the world, like the
Oh, okay, so this is kind of new. Oh my god. Oh, so Texas is probably getting almost a different status in terms of state because of that, because you guys really need Texas right now.
The Eagle Ford in the south that became the 5th largest known oil field.
Is this Texas also, or this is not Texas? I think this is still Texas, right?
Just behind the enormous Bergen Field in Kuwait, and an area located in the Permian Basin of West Texas known as the Spraberry and Wolfcamp that is now considered the 2nd largest oil field in the world, remaining only behind the mighty Gavar Field that forms the backbone of Saudi Arabia's oil might. In the span of just a single decade, this new reality and these enormous discoveries rocketed Texan oil production 5-fold to make the state a larger oil producer than every single country in OPEC. Besides,
that's insane. Again, that's really mind blown. Oh my god. You guys are, in a way, you guys are really lucky, right? Oh man, because everything plays out perfectly. Almost seems there is a master plan on this. Oh man, that's amazing actually. So now actually everything makes a lot of sense for me, because at the beginning the Mississippi River, okay, I could understood that and made a lot of sense, but right now, everything is basically the title of the video, overpowered.
Besides Saudi Arabia itself. And today, Texas alone produces 45% of the United States' entire domestic oil production. And
okay, again, how Texas is not the richest state in America? Because I believe that's California. Oil, come on, look at what Saudi Arabia does with that. So Texas is like mini Saudi Arabia in America.
If it were an independent country, Texas would be the world's 4th largest oil producer, behind only the rest of the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. And, of course, it's not just Texas that produces a ton of oil and gas now for the United States. There was also the shale play in the Bakken Field of North Dakota. This suddenly transformed that isolated central state into America's 2nd largest oil producer, only behind Texas. There's also the vast oil and gas fields in the offshore of the Gulf of Mexico, the north
those I was aware already.
slope of Alaska, and what could ultimately prove to potentially become.
Oh my god, Alaska also have that. Ooh. So Russia should never sold Alaska to you guys, because probably you guys make a lot of money with Alaska.
The largest natural gas field ever discovered anywhere in the world. The enormous Marcellus Field, 1 to 2 miles beneath the ground, spanning across upstate New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. All told, these new discoveries tripled the estimated natural gas reserves of the United States between 2002 and 2018.
I have to make a pause and drink some water, because this video is just insane. This is by far the best video I ever reacted on my channel, at least from personal enjoyment. Not sure if this video will do very well or not, because I don't control that. But man, I learned so much today watching this. And now, look, I knew America was ahead of the competition. I had I knew a couple of reasons, very difficult to invade, etc. But now I have a much better perception. Let me drink some water. Let's continue.
And with a massive network constructed of new gas pipelines stretching across the border into Mexico, accompanied by a series of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, export terminals across the Gulf Coast, Maryland, and Alaska, the United States suddenly transformed out of nowhere into the 2nd largest exporter of natural gas, behind only the Russians. And by 2018, what had previously been unimaginable back in the days between the 1970s and 2005 finally happened. the United States had once again, for the first time in more than 4 decades, surpassed both Saudi Arabia and Russia to regain its title as the world's #1 producer of oil. A position
That's really incredible.
that the United States will now almost certainly
I was not sure if America was #1 on this, but I guess right now I know.
retain for all of the foreseeable future. And perhaps most importantly, the vast shale basins of the United States are all located within the interior of the continent and nearby to major navigable water-based transportation routes.
Of course.
And the network of US oil and gas pipelines and refineries is simultaneously so vast, they span across nearly the entire continent as well. Effectively, this has largely made the United States an empire that is mostly capable of true energy independence, no longer reliant on the complicated geopolitics of the outside world for supplies necessary to power modern civilization. For economic reasons, the United States continues to import large amounts of oil from abroad, but primarily from within the North American continent she so thoroughly dominates. Canada and Mexico alone provide for around 60% of all the imported oil used within the United States today.
Okay. Okay, I mean, but why you guys are still importing so much? The guy said economical reasons, but what are those?
No longer can oil embargoes from any coalition of nations outside of North America threaten the American supply of energy, and nor can a naval blockade of America's energy imports that primarily come in from over.
Okay, so basically you guys also sell a lot. You guys maybe do some type of arbitrage, right? Buy it a bit cheaper. I guess I can see it.
Land from other parts of the
And if you buy a lot, you also put pressure on the prices that people pay you. I get it.
continent's interior. Combined, these geographic and geologic strengths add together to make the United States the most formidable global power of the 21st century and human history. But it doesn't mean that the country is completely immune to external attack and without weakness. Even though the United States is now largely energy independent in terms of oil and gas, the country continues to maintain an extremely heavy presence across the oil and gas-rich Middle East. Not because it directly relies on oil and gas from there for themselves, but because the resources of the Middle East are absolutely central to the wider global economy at large, and vital for many of the United States' most significant allies in East Asia.
This is 100% truth. I mean, even with the war going on with Ukraine, big part of Europe was relying a lot in Russia, and that was problematic. That's why I think America is so ahead of Europe nowadays, because you guys can, you guys have everything inside your borders, and we don't.
Disruption in the flow of oil and gas out of the Middle East through the Strait of Hormuz would be incredibly destructive to the world economy. A world economy that the United States has found itself increasingly integrated and interconnected with today. As much as 30% of the entire modern US GDP and nearly 40 million American jobs stem from this interconnected web of trade with the rest of the world, which means that to a large extent, the United States is, in fact, still dependent on the rest of the world, and especially the...
I mean, nowadays there is this globalization effect we have. Of course, there is always some type of dependence, but compared with other countries, I don't think is almost, honestly, almost seems irrelevant.
Region of the world that most powers it, the Middle East. This is why in 1991, decades before the Shale Revolution, the United States was so swift to destroy the army of Saddam Hussein after he led Iraq into invading and conquering neighboring Kuwait. By seizing control of Kuwait, Saddam found himself personally in control of more than 20% of the entire world's supply of oil known at the time. After mobilizing his army on the borders of Saudi Arabia immediately afterwards, it appeared clear that he was going to invade that country as well. And
oh my god, Iraq actually had a plan to be... Iraq could have become so strong. That's insane.
Seize control over their oil fields, catapulting him into possession of 45% of the world's known supply of oil, which effectively would have made Saddam Hussein the master of oil's price and supply across the planet. Unwilling to tolerate that threat to the global economy, the United States mobilized the largest coalition of nations ever seen since the Second World War, and went to war against his army, liberating Kuwait and pushing Iraqi forces back across the border. But by doing so, the United States committed to basing large numbers of troops in Saudi Arabia nearby to the front line. And they didn't leave following the war's conclusion. Combined with the US's financial support for the Saudi regime, the harsh economic sanctions imposed on Iraq following the end of the war, and the staunch American support for Israel, these events all contributed to Osama bin Laden and his Al-Qaeda organization to attack the United States directly in the deadliest single attack.
Okay. So that's interesting that he's actually saying that, because I also had an idea about this. You know, that Saudi, this was some type of revenge almost, right?
Ever perpetrated against the American heartland on September the 11th, 2001. In response, the United States initiated the War on Terror and subsequently invaded the landlocked, mountainous Afghanistan, where the local Taliban regime was shielding bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. And so began what would ultimately transform into the longest war in American history that would last for the next 20 grueling years. And ultimately, after more than 2 decades of fighting that cost more than $2 trillion and over 140,000 lives across the country, the United States ultimately decided to withdraw almost exactly 1 year ago, back in
I remember this. I mean, this was fairly recently, actually.
August of 2021, culminating in
It was, the president was Joe Biden, right? Or was still Donald Trump? I think it was Joe Biden.
Ultimate Taliban resurgence that swept over the country and catapulted them back into power yet again.
Do you guys think do you guys end up withdrawing too soon, or should have done a bit, in a slower pace?
As with Vietnam decades before it, the war in landlocked, mountainous Afghanistan ultimately became a decisive foreign policy defeat for the United States, and explicitly showcased that even the most powerful empire in human history has its limitations. As the war in Afghanistan encompassed more than 8% of the entirety of American history and spanned across more than 2/3 of my own lifetime and many other Americans and Afghans alike, this conflict is perhaps the most critical and important of all 21st century wars for us to understand in both countries. How and why it began, why it lasted for so long, and what lessons can be learned from it both within America, Afghanistan, and the rest of the world. But unfortunately, if I made an in-depth video about the war in Afghanistan here on YouTube, the many disturbing...
Oh, okay, so there is an in-depth video. Okay, so forget all the questions I asked today. If you are watching until now, we are basically at the end. Put one in the chat if you would like me to react to that video about the Afghanistan war, because I would love to do it. But if you guys also give me that support, I would do it for sure. Put one in the chat.
Violent and controversial...
When I say in the chat, I mean comments, as you guys can probably understand.
Details of discussing a very recent and horrible conflict would cause the video to become demonetized and age restricted, which I
Oh man, I don't know why YouTube is so weird about that type of stuff. Come on.
completely understand and believe is appropriate. But it ultimately means that YouTube's algorithm would never promote the video to you. And there's just simply...
But by the way, I know if I react to that video, I would also be not monetized. I don't care. You know, if you guys want me to react to that video, put one and I will do it 100%.
No way that you would ever see it here. And that's why instead, I created yet another full-length companion video to this one in my ongoing Modern Conflict series that's about the exact same length as this video that covers the entire course and explanation into America's war in Afghanistan from the very beginning in 2001 to the very end in 2021 and uploaded it directly to Nebula, which, as I'm sure you've probably heard by now.
But I believe... So now I got a bit confused, but I believe he also have a video on his YouTube channel about Afghanistan.
Now is home to tons of exclusive...
Because the way they're putting almost seems like that he ended up taking the video out, but I have an idea that I don't know, maybe not, but if there is a video, I will react if you guys want it.
Exclusive, ad-free content like my entire Modern Conflict series, with 16 other full-length videos containing more than 5.5 hours worth of additional combined content that you can go and watch right now, covering more than a dozen recent major
amazing
wars and
content creator, by the way.
Stay up to date on what's going on in our world and why. From this video covering all of the events leading up to Russia's recent decision to invade Ukraine, to this one covering the ongoing Chinese genocide of the Uyghurs in Xinjiang,
oh man, that also looks like an amazing video about China.
This one covering the 2008 Russian invasion of Georgia, and many more. Of course, the reason why all of these videos are only available on Nebula is because they just wouldn't ever work here on YouTube, and would never be able to be viewed because of the way this site works in relation to highly controversial and sensitive recent events. On the other hand, Nebula is a totally different platform without an algorithm and without any ads. It's just a platform about great and unique content made by great...
By the way, I know this is a sponsor, but I was not even aware of this website.
...and independent educational creators, with plenty of other unique, exclusive bonus projects from other creators you probably already know, like Real Engineering's incredible World War II era Battle of Britain and Logistics of D-Day series, and multiple hour-plus-long documentaries from Wendover Productions.
Seems a great platform.
Nebula and all of this incredible exclusive content is absolutely through the truly amazing CuriosityStream Nebula bundle deal. And with its current sales price, it's less than $15 a year to get full access to both sites. And CuriosityStream has some pretty awesome stuff that you're definitely going to enjoy as well, like Afghanistan 1979. An hour-long documentary covering the entire history of the Soviet Union's invasion and occupation of Afghanistan throughout the 1980s, explaining in depth all of the background information that you need to know before watching my video on Nebula covering America's invasion and occupation just over a decade after the Soviets left. I really can't recommend it enough, and I genuinely don't know about a better deal that exists anywhere in streaming. You get 2 streaming sites, both with content you'll actually watch, and all for less than $15 a year at the current sales price. But what's even more, signing up will actually help countless
Okay, this is a long ad, to be honest, but...
independent educational creators beyond just real-life lore. So please make sure to do so right now by clicking this button that's here on your screen right now, which will take you directly to curiositystream.com/real-life-lore to sign up, or by following the link that's down below in the description. And, as always, thank you so much for watching.
Hey. Guys, thank you so much also for watching me reacting to this. The reason I never skip or at least I try to never skip the ad that they put, the sponsor is, since I'm reacting to them, I think it's also fair that I also watch the ad. But hope you guys end up enjoying the video. Do not forget to leave a like. I thought it was a fascinating one. And yeah, America is kind of OP when it comes to geography, but I learned a lot. So don't forget to leave a like. See you guys next time. Bye.